So, Rich, we're going to turn things over to you now. So, go ahead and we'll be looking forward to seeing your demo.
Okay,
Yes.
so hi everybody. I'm going to power through this because of the technical setup, which we're already having trouble with. It's pretty hard for me to stop and keep it going because there's all kinds of stuff in this thing. So if you have any questions, if you just be kindly enough to hold them to the end, write them down or whatever, and I'll stay as long as anybody wants to stay to talk about this stuff. So we're going to do earrings from laminated pen blanks and scraps. And let me start with the premise that you can never be too rich, too thin, or have too many earrings. And I believe that's attributed to Wallis Simpson, who I'm sure all of you remember was the Duchess of Windsor, married to the former King Edward VIII, who abdicated to marry her. So watch out, you're dealing with a recovering history major here. So it's going to be a little tough. So here are some of the things I've made over the last year or so. You'll see some of that famous Doug Waters laminated walnut and cherry wood over there. So you can get all kinds of different effects with these. And it's great for using stuff that you have around. And here's kind of how we start. So basically how this all started is I'd be going up to Totally Turning in Saratoga over the years, and they have these great bins of bargain bowl blanks. And like Joe Larice, I'm just not that interested in pens for whatever reason, but I thought these things were cool. And so because they were a great bargain for no other reason, I just kept buying them over the years, having no idea what I was going to do with them. And then one day I figured, well, I got to do something with this. And I recalled that I have this book that I recommend to anybody who's interested in jewelry making by Hilary Bowen. And I went in there and she had some ideas on how to turn earrings out of some very simple stuff. So we start with something like this, and we end up with something like this, or something like this. And again, here's the Doug Waters laminated walnut and cherry, just scraps sitting around, and we get this, or this. So question is, why earrings? And my answer is, why not? They're inexpensive. They are quick and easy to make. I mean, you can start to finish one of these projects in an hour or two. It's not 6 months of waiting for something to dry and get out of shape. They're personal gifts that are generally appreciated. And importantly, they're cheap to ship. So when I ship stuff, this is what it usually looks like. And that's kind of the way it normally is at my house. You can just put these things in a little padded envelope, not for $1. That's just show you how big they are. And for a couple of bucks, you can just stick them in the mail, and they arrive without any packaging or any kind of extra stuff. Sometimes I put some bubble wrap around them, but that's about it. And there's another advantage. You hardly have any mess to clean up. You go from this and this to this. So just for the cleanup alone, it's worth doing. You spend a lot more time having fun than cleaning stuff up.
But then what do you do for mulch?
Yeah. And another advantage is there are no dangerous tools to be used in the course of this thing. No finger chopping. You come out with all your fingers, no bandsaws or chainsaws. So that's another big advantage. Now, what's really important if you're going to try this, and I really want to caution everybody, weight is a major consideration. And we make bowls and all, we don't mostly concern ourselves with those things. But my earrings generally weigh less than 1/10 of an ounce. And I just want to warn everybody, and this is really an important warning. If they're too heavy, hold on one second, I hit the wrong button. If they're too heavy, there will be consequences. The earlobes will distort. Your recipient is liable to break out into facial hair and tattoos. So this is really important. So be very careful with your design and your weight. For those of you who like using calipers, and you guys know who you are, this is a great project for you. And as a bonus, you get to use your skew for almost the entire project. For all you skew haters, get your arms around this. This is perfect for you. So my advice is, if you're going to try this, is to work out your design on paper first. If it doesn't work on paper, it likely won't work on the lathe. And for many projects, I will frequently draft the design and cut out a full-size profile. And here's an example. This is obviously not an earring, it's a hollow form, but it just shows you that I will just go to what the profile will look like. Basically, these are generally called story sticks or something of that sort. And this is just made out of an old file folder. So the pen blanks, as Joe mentioned earlier, are like 5 inches long, about 13/16 by 13/16. They're pretty standard. You can get them almost anywhere. And one of the cool things about this is you have to make 2 at a time. So it's a real challenge to make identical pieces. I did learn in the course of this that generally you have a human face between these two, so that except for the time that they're in the box, nobody really notices if they're out of whack, but I should have held that to the end. But anyway, so you want them to be as identical as possible, and you want to make sure that you don't make toothpicks. That's really important. So let's lay this out. Here's a full-size drawing on graph paper. So you don't have to be an artist to do this. And I use the file folder and make a story stick. So you see, I'll do the drawing. The drawing is done to absolute full size. And then I'll cut out the profile and I'll use that profile throughout. And we'll use it as we go along here. Now, how do you mount these things? There are a couple of ways. You can mount them in a 4-jaw chuck like this. It's quick and easy. One of my problems with this is it wastes a lot of wood, and I want to hold on to as much wood as I can throughout this thing. You can take off your regular jaws from your 4-jaw chuck and mount pin jaws, but that's too much work. I can't be bothered. So instead, I use a collet chuck. I make a cylinder and insert it in a collet chuck. Now, for those of you who don't have or have not used a collet chuck, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I just wanted to introduce that to you now. The collet is actually the thing in my left hand, that silver thing. Now, there's a health warning, and I do want to warn you at this point, because of COVID and CDC guidelines, I will be double masking throughout this presentation. So I want to keep you guys all safe. And I hope you're double masking too, because we want to keep the group together. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get started. All right. Generally, I mount these between a 1/2-inch spur drive and a 1-way live cup setter. Doug, in fact, we've been talking about earlier, convinced me to get this 1/2-inch spur drive, and it's turned out to be something I use all the time, because the last thing you want when you're trying something like this is for those prongs to be sticking up into your tool and making sparks. And the live center is pretty useful, this cup center, because it really gives extra stability, and I do like that. So the key thing is to start making a cylinder out of the blank. You can round it any way you want. I like to start using the skew right away, because by using the skew at this point, I'm practicing, and I have lots of time to get my muscle memory back in shape. And if I mess up, it doesn't matter, because I still have plenty of wood, and you have time to recover. So I start using the skew even before I have to. I could use it, I could just use a roughing gouge, but instead I do use the skew virtually for the entire project. And here's another look at that. This is super slow-mo. Of course, the reason is here, it's here for absolutely no reason other than it looks cool. And I just thought you guys would want to see that. So I just love the way stuff flies off there. But anyway, I did that just basically because I could. Anyway. All right, so let's get set up. Pay no attention to the mess behind that man. So again, you want to get an even cylinder. And I think even more than for most projects, because you have so little wood to mess with and so few opportunities to recover. I'm just measuring like crazy throughout, and I'm not a guy who likes to measure. I'm a guy who likes to cut 3 times and measure once. But I'm measuring all throughout this thing, very, very carefully because I don't want to lose any wood. And I want the cylinder to be as even as possible across the board. Now, what I'm doing is I'm getting the cylinder, and I'm going to get a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I just wanted to show you this at this point. Most of us are used to making tenons, and instead of making a full tenon here, what I'm really making is more of a stopper. That little indentation there on the left, on the blank, is actually probably about a 1/16 of an inch narrower than the actual cylinder. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I want to save as much wood as possible to go into the collet chuck. And so I want that thing actually to be as thick as possible. We're going to come back to this in a second, but I just want to introduce this to you at this point. So again, measure, measure, measure. Here I'm going to lay out that little stopper thing, that little mini tenon, if you will. I'll actually lay out the entire piece, areas where there's going to be waste. I want to make sure everything's going to fit, and then I'll go and come back with my parting tool and make actual lines in the piece to go over the pencil lines. Now I'm going to make the I'm making that I made that little stopper thing, and it fits into the collet. And let me just stop this for a second. That collet is a 3/4 of an inch wide hole. Those collets come in all different sizes, and the 3/4 inch is the widest one I have. So I wanted the widest one to give me the most support. I could have gone down to a smaller size, but again, I have this one. And you'll notice I pushed that in really hard, and it's very tight. I keep it as tight as possible, and because I want to have as much support. Also, if you see these red handles here, I'm going to use those in a second to tighten down the chuck. So the collet fits into the body of the chuck, and then the collar fits above it, and it squeezes the collet tines into the wood and holds it very, very securely. You mount this sucker on the lathe like you do any other piece, and your tailstock. And we'll talk a little bit about the tailstock. Here I have the tailstock relatively tight in there. Later on, I'm actually going to loosen it up because too much pressure actually does not become your friend. Now I have those red handled things, and I'm going to tighten up the collet chuck, make it really, really tight. I could probably run this thing unsupported without the tailstock at this point, but it's a lot easier and safer to do it this way. And this is what it looks like when it's all set up. Pretty simple. Now, what we're going to do is make 2 earrings at once, as I said earlier. The tops of the earrings will actually be on the right side, and the bottom of the earrings are going to be on the left side. And just to make sure I remember what I'm doing there, you saw I took a piece of tape and put it on the center and wrote the word top because, you forget. So I highly advise that you mark as much as possible. Again, this is with it laid out. There are 2 earrings. You see there's a center double line. The center double line is waist. To the left of the center double line is the top of the left earring. And way to the right is the top of the right earrings. So these earrings are going to be oriented in the same direction, which hopefully will, when we're done, have the pattern match to some extent.
Oh,
Now I'm using the story stick guy to just lay this thing out in a little more detail. So this is going to be the top of the right earring, and there's the bottom of the right earring. So this is what it looks like when it's all set up. And then I mark the fattest part because that's going to be very important as we go along here. And I do that on both of the earrings. So it's all laid out at this point. And then I'll take my parting tool and put some permanent lines, if you will, in the center and the waist. It also gives me a place to do a little bit of starting as I begin using the skew. Okay, so at this point I have the tailstock relatively tight, and I'm going to keep it tight as I go down and make this thing a little bit thinner, I'm actually going to loosen this up a little bit. And we're going to just go back and forth using the skew. And what's really important is that you work downhill. Always work downhill. I like that effect. I'm going to do that again. Whoops, maybe not. Okay, so here I'm actually sort of started again a little bit in the middle, so I hope this isn't too confusing. I'm working on the bottom of the left earring here and just nibbling away, taking my time. And then I'm going to switch to start working on the tops of the earrings. So I'm going to go back and forth, top, top, left, left. So this is the top of the left earring, going up to the center waistline. Top of the right earring. Just little cuts. And I'll go back. Now I'm going to do the bottom of the right earring. Just nibble away. Okay. And after you do that for a while, it starts to look like this. So what's really cool is you want a light touch. You really want to make sawdust, not shavings, because this is shavings. Big shavings are not going to be your friend in this case. Very light touch. We don't have to be light. Okay. So take another look at that as we continue making this a little bit thinner. This is the top of the left earring. And that's the top of the right earring. Starting to take shape. And then measure. Even though you're nowhere near finishing up, you want to make sure you don't get ahead of yourself in terms of the shapes. You want the shapes to evolve simultaneously and equally. Otherwise, you're unlikely to have a final result that is also equal and symmetrical. Okay, so we're developing the shape here. Let me just turn my page for a second. And now we're moving along and we're nearly done. And as you get toward the end, I'm actually going to use the parting tool to do some of the final little work on the edges. I find that it works out very well. And again, measure, because you want to be equal in every way on these things. And this is a great opportunity for those of you who bought those digital calipers 3 years ago and never got to use them. This is a great project for justifying that purchase, and it helps a lot. So I'm going along and I'm using this story stick a lot, and it gives me a good idea of whether the shapes are what I want and what I need. And trust me, no catches occurred in the preparation of this demo. So it's really, I wanted to say that because I know that's never happened to anybody here.
No.
And now we get to the point where they're pretty much done. At least they're recognizable as something that's a potential earring shape, and we can start to sand them. Now, what's really cool about using the skew, if you're careful with the skew and have a good technique, you can start with 120 or 220 in lots of cases. I'm thinking I'm starting here with 220 sandpaper. It saves you a whole bunch of work. And it's really nice to be able to have this nice smooth surface to work with. And you just work through all the nooks and crannies. If you can't get in, then I suggest that you make yourself a Joe Larice signature sanding cone to get into the nooks and crannies. I'm sure if you talk to Joe after this, he'll get you the plans very, very extensive plans for making one of these things. And they're very useful. You just wrap a piece of sandpaper around it and just put it up in there. And then this is very important. I've received a certificate from the Humane Sanding Institute that certifies that no 80 grit sandpaper was harmed in the making of this demo. So, and it's, in fact, Sandy Abernett signed it himself. So I'm very excited about this. And I hope everybody else in this group will, aspire to get one of these certificates. So they're really terrific recognition. Okay, so we're almost done. Don't applaud. Now we got to get them off the lathe. Now, again, I was emphasizing that I've kind of loosened things up a little bit as I go through here in terms of the headstock pressure. You don't want it wobbly, but I don't want it really, really tight, because if you think about it, if you keep increasing the pressure, if the pressure is too tight, these suckers are just going to pop right off there and break. So at this point, I'm actually loosening this up a little bit when I go to saw these off. I tried when I first started making these using my fancy Japanese cutoff saw and found out it was just too aggressive and too thick, and I hated it. So I have this dinky old coping saw that works just fine, and I just take my time and cut these guys off, and it's just fine. Now I want to draw your attention to the fact that, and you'll see it in this piece when they're off, that the bottoms and the tops are actually a little bit square. And the reason I leave it like that is because I'm just frankly too chicken to try to get it any rounder than that while it's still on the lathe. I'm sure there are plenty of people in the group who could do it. It's just not worth it to me, because I find it's just as easy to take 10 minutes and put it on a piece of not 80 grit sandpaper on a sanding block, and it just round it out, and you end up with a very nice shape. And again, remember, I'm doing 2 earrings at a time here, so you want them to be the same. So you're going back and forth between each earring to keep them basically, if you will, symmetrical. Now, I did 2 at once here, but I've done 4 at once. Again, there's the famous Doug Waters walnut and cherry laminate. There are 4 of them. I have 2 daughters, so guess what? Each of them got one of those sets. And it's a great way to mass produce these things if you want. The only problem you have with a 4 set like this is that, again, you have stability issues as you get really thin. You end up putting your hand behind the piece to stabilize it, and you've got to really be careful because they can fly off. All right, so we finished up basically the shape of the earring. We've got something we like. Now we got to get them on some ears. Now, for those in this group, and I think that's most of this group, these are called ear wires. And this is how you get them on the ear. The top part, obviously, I'm sure everybody knows, fits through the ear, and the bottom part hangs the earring. Choice of hardware, which in the jewelry trade, Michael will tell you, is generally called findings, is really important. On the left, there's a set of stainless steel ear wires that are from Joann's, and on the right is a set of findings and earring making pieces that I got probably at Michael's, and it has all kinds of different stuff in it. The things kind of in the center that look like long, thin cotter pins actually go through the ear wires and into the earring. You drill a little hole, you cut those things down to size, and you put them in there. So one of them looks like this. They're very, very thin. I tried them initially and did not like them. I didn't think they held the earrings on securely enough. I had actually one fall off despite some really good glue. So I'm not fond of those. So I went looking for another solution. I found these tiny little screw eyes. So that'll give you an idea. That's a penny for those of you who don't remember what pennies look like. You can get them in sets. And they come in all different finishes. And they turn out to be perfect. And to get them on the earring, to get these screw eyes on the earring, you have to use a tiny little drill because they're tiny little earring screw eyes, of course. And this is a pin vise. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's basically a tiny little hand drill. I'll talk about that in a second. So let's make the hole. Do not try to drill the hole while holding on to these things. Trust me, don't ask me how I know. So put them in some kind of a non-jarring vise, non-marring vise. That's hard to say, non-marring vise. This is just a bar clamp, which works very well, and it doesn't ever leave any impression. And I start by taking an awl or a nice pick and making a little dimple in these things. And that's what I'm left with, is a good starter hole for the drilling. Again, coming back to the pin vise, that drill is a number 56 drill. For those of you who haven't used these kinds of drills before, they're not even listed in terms of their dimensions. That's actually 5/128ths of an inch in diameter, which is about a third of the diameter of the smallest drill you probably have in your drill index, which is generally about a 1/16 of an inch. So they're very tiny, and they can bend, and so you want to be very careful with them. And this is the way you set them up, basically with your finger on the top. And then this one has a sleeve that goes up and down. I'll show you how that works in a second. There are some that you just turn with your one hand by themselves. I like this one with the little up and down thing because it actually works a little bit more efficiently. And this is if it's set up. And this is the way it works. Just very simple. You just mostly want to make a starter hole and to give the screw eye some place to go so it does not create so much pressure within the earring that it pops something out and ruins the piece. You want to push down on the pin vise from the top, but not so hard that you bend the drill, and you let the drill do the work. And again, when you have this all done, now it's time to put in the little screw eyes. And what I do is I just take a little bit of glue and just put it someplace, make a little dab of glue. You don't want to try and put a dab of glue on the screw eye. You'll get it all over the place. And do not try to pick these up with your fingers. It just is, you will not be able to do it. I have about 12 of them on the floor of my shop somewhere that I can't find. So that's how I found out that you don't want to do it. Just use some kind of pliers just to put them in place, get them started, put that little bit of glue on. So dip it in the glue first, get it started, take it out, tighten it up, hand tight. You don't have to go crazy. The glue is important because you don't want one of these things unraveling in the middle of dinner and dropping into your recipient's soup. So just make sure you put a little bit of glue on these suckers. Then I take them outside to my high-tech spray booth with my high-tech spray rack. There's a bunch of cup hooks on a piece of old wood, and just put a little rattle spray on them. And of course, the nice thing about the rattle spray is not only does it work well, but it's dry in 10 minutes and I can get back to work. So my advice, and this is really important, I really want to emphasize this. You want to buy quality ear wires. If you're the kind of person who doesn't like to spend money on some of this high-end stuff, this is no place to be cheap. You want to buy stainless steel or silver, crucial. If you can afford gold, fine. You don't want to buy any of these mystery metals or stuff that you find on Amazon where you really don't know what it is. Even though they tell you what it is, you really know, because if you don't get the right kind of metal, there will be consequences. This is what can happen. So you want to be very, very careful. Now, I made a joke out of this, but let me be very, very serious about this part. I can tell you from experience with my girls is that if you don't have quality ear wires, you can end up with whoever you're giving the gift to getting irritation of the ears, infections, or even worse. So the last thing you don't want to have is to say, oh, you know those earrings you gave me? They sent me to the doctor. So be careful and don't scrimp on this. Okay. Now, to get these on the screw eyes, you want to open the loop on the ear wire. Don't try to do it on the screw eye because you'll mess up the earring. You want to open the loop. And most of us are inclined to try to twist these things. Don't do it. What you want to do is keep the loop on the same plane that it was in. In other words, you want to twist this, if you're thinking about it, put a pliers in that little loop, and you're going to twist it clockwise to the right, and that will open it up and it will not break. My advice is if you have some jeweler's pliers or something like this, these are round, they don't have serrations on them, and they don't mar the wire. You open that thing up, you close it up, you drop the earring on, and this is what you get. The patterns are relatively the same. You never know what you're going to end up with, but I try to match them up as much as possible. Now, if any of you are interested in doing this, I've put together some resources. You can try to scribble this all down now, but there's no way you'll be able to do it. So I've given David Heim a copy of this, and he can post it on the website. And you can go and shop for some of this stuff yourself. It's pretty easy to find. And if you're interested in jewelry stuff, hit up Michael Ginsberg, because that's his business. And then, one final thing is, I know this is a group, I know a lot of you, and this is a pretty group with a lot of manly men in it. I think, earrings make some of us a little bit squeamish. But I just want to emphasize that the earrings aren't just for girls anymore. So I hope you'll try this. I had fun doing them. I like doing them. None of these earrings have left my family, so I can't seem to be able to get them out of the family. And I hope you'll try it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Well, first, I want to say thank you, because I think you did a fantastic job, and your sense of humor is top notch, man. Especially the double mask. That was fantastic.
I give my wife credit for that. She actually did that at a Zoom meeting with some of her friends. So I'll steal anybody's joke.
But yeah, please, anybody has any questions now, this is a great time to ask.
I do want to mention that I'm familiar with collet trucks from using it on my CNC, and those collets are designed to be snapped into the ring that is screwed onto the outside before they're put in. And so actually just sticking the collet into the socket and screwing the thing on top is actually something that will cause you problems in certain situations.
Nice.
Well, if the piece of wood fits through the hole.
Actually, the problem is that the collet will get stuck in the socket.
What was the name of the drill?
It's called a pin vise. So you can get them PIN, new word VISC. It's a strange name for a drill. I think I got mine. I think I got this one at Micromark. It's in the resources. Micromark is great for tiny little tools for model making and things of that sort. I suspect you can probably find them around. There's a kind that you just twist with your fingers. I like this thing with the little collar thing that goes up and down. A little easier to use.
So how long were those earrings without the hardware?
They run from about an inch to about an inch and a half.
Yeah, great. They look great.
Thanks.
Hey, Rich,
Yes.
could you give us an idea of the difference in price between the stainless, the sterling silver, and the gold? Some rough idea, just
Well, I haven't bought the gold, so let's just start with that. And I don't buy the silver for this reason. The silver is usually marketed two different ways. One is full silver, which you really don't need, and the other is silver plate. When it's silver plate, you never know how good the plating is, and it just seems to me it just opens up your world to trouble. So I just stay with the stainless.
Okay.
I think I got that pack you saw earlier from Joann's, and they're a good source for some of this stuff. Joann's used to be Joann's Fabrics, but they sell a lot of craft stuff too. I think. Yeah. David Heim for turning me on to them, and I think it was like about $7 or $8 for about 20 of these things. So they're not expensive.
Great.
A stainless is safe. It's good. And frankly, unless you're a jeweler, I don't think you can tell the difference between the stainless and the silver. And you don't have to polish the stainless.
Terrific.
I just wanted to give a live viewing of I think those specific earrings.
All right, there
That's
we
my
go.
daughter, that's my daughter Diana in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, in
That's
Boulder.
great.
All right, all right.
Here,
Look
I'll
terrific.
talk again so you can see them.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
There is indeed a face in between them. He was correct in that.
Rich, do you have a special on the Van Gogh series where you just need one?
I'll get back to you on that, Alan.
Nice to see you, Diana.
Was that Alan?
Yes, nice to see you again.
Hi. Good to see you.
They look great. It was a great presentation. Great demo, Rich.
Yes,
Sure was.
definitely.
Right, Rich.
All right, another round of applause.
Thanks, guys.